So I'm Edward Pinner. I'm the curriculum manager for performing arts and music. So I manage all of the vocational courses in that area. And my role on Movies Rock is, I guess, a producing role, bringing all of the sort of disparate elements together, and I suppose chief cajoler, stroker, the person really who's trying to just make sure everything happens. I'm not taking any credit at all for sort of the creative the work that's going on, which is fantastic. But certainly I'm trying to sort of help out and chivvy things along where possible. So I've been liaising with the Civic Hall, bringing staff together to get them to talk about the project. And we had an idea last year. What I wanted to do was, I was very aware of, having directed a number of musical theatre productions in the past, very aware that we always had very large audiences for those productions, often, frequently sold out. I'd go along to see some music shows, and although the levels of musicianship was excellent, the quality of the work was outstanding, I felt they didn't always get the audience that I thought they really deserved. So with that in the back of my mind, and also wanting to take something into Stratford-Upon-Avon town, some of our work from the college into town, getting people over the bridge from Stratford town centre into the college site itself I think is quite difficult. So let's take something into town for them to see. So bringing the two groups together was the initial sort of idea, really, and having a showcase for our students. And of course then, if you think about that idea of bringing musical theatre and musicians together, then you've also got opportunities for the technical theatre students to get involved, and obviously the music technology students who will be operating all of the live sound for this event. You suddenly start realising there's a lot of students involved in this project, and then all of a sudden this year we've got the media students involved in creating a documentary. I know on the last night we have the catering students who are involved in producing canapes for the VIP reception that's being organised. And I would say there's now nearly over 100 students involved in this whole project. And it begins to take on a life of its own, really. And that's something I'm really pleased about. It's about giving us that presence in the town and at the Civic. And I get a sense now that the word is out there and people are aware of the potential for this performance, and that it will be stunning. There is, with the marketing of it, I took the decision very early on, which is to use the Civic Hall to go onto their mailing list, because obviously they have an audience already. So we've bought into that effectively. So they've produced the tickets for us. We're selling them at college reception, which is our box office, but also through the Civic Hall as well, which means it goes onto their website, and there's a lot of other sort of spin-offs from that which we're using. It's obviously advertised on the college website. It's been advertised in our season leaflet, which we produce every term, with all of our different productions in. And then we also have, for this half term, we have a festival of live performance, and it's also gone into that leaflet as well. So I think the marketing of the show is absolutely fine, and I have every expectation that all three performances will be sold out. Yeah. Movies Rock, it was my idea last year. It wasn't Movies Rock, sorry, Musicals Rock was my idea last year, and this was the vehicle that I came up with to showcase what we do in the college with those particular groups of students to take into town. I like the idea of, it's very cheesy and I suppose very me. I like the idea of musicals rock, taking the best sort of songs from rock musicals was the idea last year, and ideally finding something that I knew the musical theatre students would enjoy performing, but also that the music students would engage with as well. I think this year with Movies Rock, it's actually more of a challenge, and maybe that some of the music students have found it slightly more challenging, because they're playing music that they wouldn't necessarily always sort of associate with. Not all, but some of the students maybe haven't encountered this type of music before. And it's a very, very different discipline, playing in a pit as effectively a pit musician. Working with the musical director in the way that they're working with Alex is probably out of their experience for a lot of those students. But that's what we do at Stratford-Upon-Avon College, is that we like to pull students in different directions. Don't just do the same thing again and again and again. Each project is an opportunity to do something that's a little bit different. It's a different challenge. And that's also very much part of this project. There isn't another project like this. Neither the music students or the musical theatre students will do this sort of project while they're at college. They'll move on to different things, and the projects they've done before this have been very different. And I think that's a great strength of those courses. I think there's always room for collaboration. The key thing about any of the creative industries, media, music, dance, acting, musical theatre, there are many areas of crossover. There are many areas where one practitioner in one particular field is relying on the skills and the ability of somebody else from another area. So, for example, it could be somebody who's designing a costume that's going to be worn by a performer, that's then going to be lit in a particular way by a lighting designer, and then a lighting operator to operate that lighting design. There is a huge amount of interrelatedness. That's a good word. And I think that what we do at the college should reflect that. That's what happens in the industry. You don't work in a vacuum. You don't work in isolation. And the more that students appreciate that and have experience of working across different areas, I think also the more they value those other areas and probably have a greater respect for each other as well, which is hugely important. You don't get very far being particularly sort of isolated in the creative sector. It just doesn't work like that. It's important. Again, it's going back to the different nature of the different projects. On the previous project, where they've had, if you like, a creative input in terms of the content and the material that they're working on, that's that project. They've done that. This is a different project. In this project, their role is as a performer. So they are being choreographed. They are being directed as they would be in a professional context. Unless you are in a company that sort of specialises in sort of devising theatre work or devising musical theatre performance. And I don't think there are a huge number of companies or even opportunities for that really in the industry. The chances are, as a musical theatre performer, you are going to be directed and choreographed on, and you turn up and you do a job. And so that, what I guess this is doing is replicating that, albeit in a different format. I mean, I think this is quite an unusual, it's not an unusual format. It's a concert performance. It's not a sort of variety show in that sense. It's much more of a concert. It's not a full-blown musical. The musical theatre students will have an opportunity to perform in a musical at the end of their course, and so they will have that experience as well. This is a different experience. This is a concert performance. So the fact that they've had one opportunity where they've generated and maybe self-directed some of their work is great, and that's a very valuable experience. But this is a different experience. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be very exciting. For me, as within education, there's always two tensions. One is to make sure that what you're doing with students is a valuable, relevant, challenging learning experience. So have we ticked that box? Are the students learning as part of this project? But also you want to put on I won't use that word, but a very good show. You know, you want to put on a really good show and excite a live audience, because, you know, as a performer, and that's what you do. That's what you're aiming to do, is to give the audience something that is that they'll go away having been, you know, entertained, you know, depending on what the work is, and enjoyed that performance. So, you know, we want to do both of those things. So, and I think this will definitely fulfil that criteria. It's a fun-filled evening. I think there is. I think the impact of seeing that number of performers in one space is very powerful, very powerful. I've seen professional, you know, even West End productions where I personally suddenly start thinking, well, where is everybody? To see a show of this magnitude, with that size of cast and that wall of sound, with the richness of the orchestration, with the richness of the harmonies. You know, I'm aware that in several parts there's 8-part harmonies going on. It's an incredible sound that's being produced, and I think that is incredibly powerful.